Today in our /malicious compliance. Why you shouldn't be telling people that you only want results. Edited to ensure better readability. Background information time. My paternal grandparents had an odd system when it came to parenting. According to them, if one of the kids do something, it is always the older one's fault. So, for example, if your younger sibling, nephew, or niece did something bad, it was your fault as the older person because you are supposed to be older one, thus more responsible. This is important because that was the system my father and his 2 older sisters and 2 younger brothers grew up under. It was the same system that was applied to the wives they married. Now, my dad's older sisters married and moved to different cities, leaving my dad and mum and his 2 younger brothers, Uncle Henry and Uncle Sam, and their wives, nice aunt and the vice witch. As a person who grew up under that regime as the oldest brother, my father wasn't keen on following this system. It helped that my mum's side of the family are all practical people who believe in fairness. But that didn't mean that my mum or us grandchildren were immune to the system, which was, well, let's put it this way, Mum and nice aunt still refer to Uncle Sam, the youngest of my dad's brothers, as the prince to this day. They are all in their 50s, 60s now. Now we come to my generation. I am the firstborn son of the firstborn son, a curse more than a blessing in my family. I have a younger brother I'll refer to as Luke, who is 4 years younger than me. Uncle Henry and nice aunt have a son I will refer to as Tom. He's 3 years younger than me. The 3 of us basically grew up together and are quite tight-knit. We do have the occasional spat born of sibling rivalry, though nobody here is perfect. Then comes Uncle Sam and his wife, Akka the Vice Witch. They have a daughter, Mary, and a son, Kevin. While we are a large family, we all live in different houses in different areas of the city, though we are still close. Mary is 9 years younger to me, and the favorite baby sister, enjoying all privileges of being the favorite baby sister to 3 older brothers. Kevin is 13 whole years younger than me. He used to be a terror when he was little. My grandparents lived with Uncle Sam, and so their system was in full effect there 24/7, unlike the rest of us who only had to endure it whenever we were around them. As the youngest sibling in his generation, he had no issues with adopting that system initially, although he did later snap out of it due to him inherently being a nice person like his other siblings and unlike his parents. Kevin is quite street smart. He knew how to game the system from the age of 2. I do love him, but he was quite a jerk. I still remember the time he tried to get his sister in trouble by beating himself hard enough to leave marks. Kid was savage. Fortunately for Mary, I was there to see it happen and could act as a witness before she could get into trouble. I still got lectured for not preventing the idiot from beating himself. You just can't win here. Anyway, on to the story. This happened when I was 16. We had all come together one Sunday at Uncle Sam's house. It was your typical family gathering. The adults were doing their thing, leaving the kids to their own devices. As the oldest, guess who ended up being babysitter-assisted parent? Moy. The moment I stepped into the house, I was taken aside by the vice witch, my granny being head witch, and told in no uncertain terms that I was to take care of her kids. Make sure that she didn't hear a single complaint from either of them. Those were her exact words, and finally, ensure that Kevin doesn't set foot in the master bedroom. Luke, Tom, and Mary aren't all much of an issue. We all love to read, stick a book under our noses, and we are liable to forget what day and time it is. In fact, Luke, Tom, and I used to always carry 2 books each, one to read and one to spare. It also helped that Luke and Tom were old enough to not want to try and kill each other or bring the house down out of boredom like they used to. That made enough material for little Mary to be occupied. Come to think of it, it was probably the reason why Mary knew way too much by the time she was 9. Kevin, however, was your typical 3-year-old. At first, he was quiet, occupied, playing with his toys. He was quiet long enough for me to think that he was going to stay that way. But no. I didn't know it at that moment, but Kevin had heard his mother tell me that he wasn't allowed in the room. He was just biding his time. As soon as he saw his opportunity, he struck. Toddling out of the room we were all in, he made a beeline for the master bedroom. I only found out when he gleefully announced his location at the top of his lungs. Now, while I was heavily into reading, I, along with Luke and Tom, were also into karate. I had even placed second in my state in sparring, losing out to an actual adult by a narrow margin. So wrangling a 3-year-old wasn't that much of an issue for me. I get him out, get him back to the room we were all in, and try reasoning with him. After all, his sister listens to me. Unfortunately, it didn't work. He dashed out the first chance he got. This time I managed to catch him before he got there. That's when Vice Witch shows up. What is going on? She demands in a what I have come to realize through Reddit, typical Karen voice. You know, full of self-entitlement. I tell her what her precious son is doing. She crouches down to his level, smiles, and says in a very indulgent voice, "Now, Kevin, you aren't allowed in Mummy's room. You should be a good boy. Don't you want to be a good boy?" Even though Kevin nodded, I could see in his eyes that he didn't really take his mother all that seriously before he toddled off. Not that the Vice Witch noticed, as she straightens up to glare at me. "Now you listen to me, young man," she hisses. "I do not want to hear any more noise coming from you lot. It is your job to keep them quiet and keep Kevin out of my room." "What if you lock your room?" I point out reasonably, seeing the key in the lock for some reason. All the rooms in that house could be locked in from the outside. "No," she whisper yells. "That is not going to happen." She yanks the key out of the hole and puts it into her pocket as if to prove her point. "Och," I say slowly, "what do you suggest I do to keep him out?" "I don't care what you do to keep him out, Teufel. I only want results." Huffing, she turns around and walks away. Fuming in impotent teenage rage, I head towards the room. Catching sight of Kevin's face and the look of mischief on it, I am suddenly hit by inspiration. Vice Witch wants results. Okay then, activate malicious compliance. In my best serious voice and face, which is not too hard come up with considering that I am not happy with my aunt, I sit next to Kevin and say, "You shouldn't go in there, Kevin. There are ghosts in the room." His little face lights up in concern and fear. Big ghosts, he says in a small voice. Immediately he looks to his sister, who is now observing the two of us. Without missing a beat, Mary says earnestly, I saw them once. Very scary. Teufel saved me from being eaten up by them. You can't go in there alone till you are this much. And she held up all 10 fingers for him to see. I love that girl. Kevin then quietly goes back to his toys, and we don't hear a peep out of him for the rest of the day. Immediate aftermath. About a week passes by, and one fine day, when I am lazing around messing about with my Nokia, it was 2003, our land starts ringing. I barely pay attention as I hear my mother answer the phone. Then she yells up at me, "It's for you." Amused, I pick up the connected handset near me. "Hello, what did you do to my son?" I bring the phone back to my ear, having yanked it away to save my eardrum. "What are you talking about, Auntie? I haven't seen your son for quite a few days now." I immediately hold the phone at arm's length again. "He is afraid of coming in my room. He says it was because of something you said." "Oh, right. Ye. I told him your room was haunted by a man-eating ghost, I think." This time I turn the handset to face the other way. "Why would you do that?" It shrieks in a frequency that would upset dogs for miles around. "Well, you told me that you didn't want him going into your room. I did not tell you to do it like that." "But you said you didn't care how I did it, and that you only wanted results." "Well, you got your result, didn't you? He's not going in anymore. Problem solved." Click. Shrugging to myself at the engaged tone, I put the phone down and go down to tell my mum what happened. I see her in the kitchen, barely hanging onto the countertop, her face red and tears running down her face. Teufel. That gasp was not snicker, a very snort nice thing to giggle do. Unable to contain herself any more, Mum finally bursts out into gales of laughter. She had listened into the whole conversation. Epilogue. Years passed by, and I had largely forgotten about that incident, until one day Kevin marches up to me with all the outrage and anger a 10-year-old could muster. "There are no such things as ghosts," he declares to the room at large while pointing an accusatory finger at me. I was confused at first, wondering what he was talking about and how could he have possibly remembered the dumb story I had fed him when he was 3. But then I caught the look of studied innocence on Mary's face. Mary had been running with that story and using it on her brother all these years. "All right," I say, turning to Kevin. "If you were sure." I trail off in a suggestive voice that I knew would have him doubting himself. After all, she had my back. It's only fair I return the favor. It took him another year to realize what I had done. Anyway, that is my story, Malicious Compliance. Maybe I was an arsehole for feeding a young boy a complete story, but whatever. Kevin is now quite a well-adjusted young man of 19, and the two of us are very close. We laugh over the story now. His mother is still the vice witch of the family, and is well on the way to being promoted to head witch once my grandmother kicks it. Nice aunt, Mum, and now my wife all look forward to the day the current head witch bites the dust. By the way, but nobody in the family has ever directed the words, "I only want results" to me. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like, subscribe, smash the bell, and whatever else our YouTube overlords require nowadays.